Too often business owners today are focusing on the little things in business. They're ordering supplies, dealing with employees, and dealing with customers, when what we should be focusing on is the most important thing, cash flow. I've grown over 10 businesses from the ground up. In this podcast, you'll learn the ins and outs of building a business and how to build transferable value. And most importantly, you'll learn how to maximize cash. They call me Cash Flow Mike, and this is the Clear Path to Cash. Hey, it's Cash Flow Mike, and welcome to the Clear Path to Cash podcast. And you won't believe what's happening today. First of all, this is episode 8, and I am joined by Seth David. First of all, he's achieved celebrity status, with the most brilliant marketing gimmick that I'd ever seen. You know what he did? He just wore a shirt that said Seth David, or I'm Seth David. Well, his business partner at the time just wore one that says not Seth David. And I think from that moment, that's when I saw him. That's when I wanted to become his friend. That's when I wanted to just be in his circle of influence. And his reputation and the value that he gives his business community has been nothing but grow ever since. I'm proud to have him as a guest, and I call him a friend. Hey, Seth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for that introduction. You bring back some memories with those not Seth David shirts.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, but I'll tell you, whatever it is, whatever you think about it now, it worked, right?
It did work. It was a very clever idea. It wasn't mine. I can't take the credit. Like you said, it was my business partner at the time who came up with it. Definitely one of the good things he did.
All right, well, I can tell you that, when I think of an individual who's made an impact, right, I think of Seth, right? And as we close out the year, I like to reflect, on the things that made an impact on me. And, Seth, you always come right to mind. And I want to get into it with you. And I've got a few questions I think that we want to talk about how you became an influencer, some of the either challenges or what's been the most, biggest revelation that you've had. But first, let me tell you that anybody, if you're a first-time listener or otherwise, go to cashflowmike.com for any of these show notes and links that are mentioned, in this episode. And of course, you can go to youtube.com and search for Cashflow Mike and subscribe to the channel, or just click the link in the show notes. Make sure that you click that bell and be notified of all the future episodes. As well, if you're listening to Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, you can find the podcast there. So subscribe and leave a review, because I need to know what's happening. Again, I'm new at this. This is only the 8th episode, so I'm really looking forward to what you've got to say and make those adjustments to make it just right. So, Seth, if you're ready, the biggest question I got for you right on my mind is, can you give me some insight into, how you got to this current influencer position?
So, by the way, and just as a quick side note, I brought some cash along because you said Cash Flow Mike, right? So I just
yes, sir.
I've got some cash here. It's a funny thing about that influencer word. I got to say, I guess there's people out there, I assume, who are sitting there going, I want to be an influencer, right? I never wanted to be an influencer. It wasn't my intention, right? And I think probably if I was going to try and give somebody like advice, if you'll have it, and I guess it's fair to say that it's not just advice, it's my experience, right? I actually have had the experience of doing what I've done. Don't try to become an influencer. I don't think it works that way. I think if you try to become an influencer, you're probably going to fail at it because you're going to try too hard and you're going to try to be somebody that you're not.
Hey,
right?
Well, it's just like cash. It's just like cash. You cannot do anything to push cash into your position. You can't do it. You can't even pursue it. You can't chase cash. You have to attract it. And I think that's what you're doing with being an influencer, is that you're putting out great content. You're making a lot of good connections, and you, my friend, are, you're doing it. You're attracting attention.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned the word attraction. The very first time I even went to an accounting conference was when Doug Sleater invited me to speak at the Sleater conference. And that was many years ago. It was in Anaheim that year. For some reason, they didn't do it in Vegas that year. I guess they had always done it in Vegas for a long time before that. But it was in Anaheim, and long story short, I had met Doug earlier that year. I knew who he was, but he reached out to me. We connected. He happened to come down here to Los Angeles, and I met up with him. And anyway, eventually he said, "Hey, would you come and speak? And he knew I didn't have experience speaking per se. And he said, would you be okay getting up on stage? Would that make you nervous? And I said, no, not at all. I in another context, I have gotten very comfortable speaking in front of groups of people, so I don't think that'll be an issue. Not to mention I was starting to do videos and things, and that's how Doug and I had connected. And that was really where it started, I think, where I started to, move towards that, I guess, for lack of a better word, influencer status. I personally, it's funny, I had this conversation on social media recently. I think that a true influencer would never actually refer to themselves as an influencer. It's like you can say I'm an influencer. If I say I'm an influencer, it just comes across as pretentious and cheesy, right?
Oh, yeah, I can see that. But since you're there, what do you think happened? Where's that moment? Can you describe that?
So thank you. You reminded me why I brought up Doug Sleater and the Sleater Conference. That year, my session was actually called, it's a program of attraction rather than promotion, right? And that's what you said. And that's what I did. That's what I've done. I went out there and I took that from another part of my life. A lot of people will recognize that phrase specifically. It comes right out of 12-step recovery. Right? AA says that about itself, is we need to be a program of attraction rather than promotion. We don't promote, we attract. So I said, let me take that concept and bring it into my business. And I started doing that with social media. And I said, what does that look like in this world? And then I also hired a marketing consultant who, unwittingly gave me that specific answer. And he said, look, Seth, he says, you're an expert at something. You know your stuff. You know your accounting. He said, so start doing videos and show people that. And I was actually already starting to do videos, but he's the one who told me put them on YouTube because that will show people that you know what you're doing. You won't have to convince them, right? And he said basically he says you give it away and people told me I was nuts. This was in 2008 when it was still kind of new to do business stuff on YouTube. And I remember the CPA who was doing my taxes at the time was like, Seth, you're giving all this stuff away for free. Like, you're crazy. People should be paying you for this. And I'm like, nope. I said, eventually you'll understand, like I wasn't even of the mind to try and convince people or explain it to them. I just knew that if I went out there, it's like the Zig Ziglar concept, right? You help enough people get what they want and you'll have everything you want. Right.
Love that.
And it's not magic. It's just, it's natural. That's how it became a program of attraction. I went out there and I said, here's how to book an NSF check in QuickBooks, and that was one of the first posts I ever did. So I always mention it.
Well, and I've got to tell you, I mean, you've put out tons of content. Have you ever counted up the number of hours that you actually have on the internet right now?
It's ridiculous. And especially now more than ever. I'm spending more time this year than ever before producing content. I'm doing a lot of webinars now. Yeah. I'd done a podcast for a year. You were on it. You were my guest on my podcast. And ultimately, a lot of factors played in. But ultimately I said, you know what? No, my platform, my format is video based, right? So I do webinars. For years, I've done a webinar every Friday morning. You've been on it many times. And now I'm doing one every Wednesday.
Right.
So, that's
twice a week now.
So that's twice a week that I'm producing content just for that. And I also just launched, actually, literally this week as we're recording this, a new video series called Notes from Nerds Desktop. And where this comes from is, first of all, they're short, easy videos. So it's a way I can produce a lot of content very quickly. Sure. I can do one new video a day. My rule is, there's one exception, actually. The one I'm posting up today it's 8 minutes, but most of the videos are going to be between 3 and 5 minutes. They got to be more than 3 minutes now, because now more than ever, Facebook and YouTube and these sites are they're not requiring it, but they're basically saying if it's less than 3 minutes, it's not going to get promoted, right?
And I've got to tell you, I've got a ton of friends, and I can't get them off the TikToks. So it might be shorter than that. And here's the thing about TikTok, Seth. I mean, and I want your notes from a nerd to be exactly the same. Is if you start watching one, it'll be like 3 hours later you get off of it.
I know. I have to. I've started playing with it, and now I haven't put anything on it myself, but I've been watching. And I'm thinking about ideas for how I can use it to, in a business way. So far, I'm seeing a lot of cute, like, pet tricks, but it's just like when Snapchat first came out, and Snapchat was that quick video format, and it didn't take long to figure out how to use it for business. You would tell your story, and you would tell what it's like, almost like now you had a vlog already, the vlog concept, the video blog. And you're just doing that with stories on Snapchat, and then it went to stories on Instagram, and now it's stories on Facebook, and everybody's putting everything in their stories, and it's beyond annoying, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. So a couple of things here. If anybody listening to this wants to come find out what you're doing, tell us where to go, and then also give us kind of an insight, kind of a little vision of the future. What's coming down the pipe?
Okay. So been a lot of evolution, but the bottom line, where to go now, and where I hope to keep it for a really long time now, is to just go to new.nerdenterprises.com.
So nerdenterprises.com.
If you go to nerdenterprises.com, you'll get over to the new site, but there's be a big logo that you click on it. It takes you over to the new, and any of the navigation you click on will automatically bring you over to the new site. But
yeah. So and every time I go to your website, I see your logo, and it reminds me that you and I had a cash flow show for just a little bit, a few months there.
I still have all the templates in Google Drive.
What's that?
I still have all the templates in Google Drive.
There you go. Hey, I mean, you never know. We might be able to recycle that one of these days.
I think we will.
There you go. Hey, I tell you what, I've got another question for you. But first, let me just talk about if you're still a new listener and you want to know more about Seth, of course, you can go to new.nerdenterprises.com, and of course, go to cashflowmike.com for any of these show notes, and I'll put a link in there to his new website. And if you have any questions, of course, about today's podcast or anything in general, just reach out on the support link right on the podcast notes, and we'll get back with you. So Seth, I want to go into kind of part 2 here. And I know you've done a lot of work with bookkeepers, accountants, those type of things over the years. What about small businesses? I mean, because that's really, it doesn't matter if we're a bookkeeper or an accountant. The end customer, the end result is
everybody's a business. Yep.
So what's the biggest realization you've had since you've been working with small businesses?
So first of all, the accountant and bookkeeper thing was also an accident, just like becoming an influencer was. My original goal was to set out to produce these videos to help business owners. My hope was that a business owner would stumble on my video and see how to record an NSF check in QuickBooks, and that business owner might be encouraged to hire me for something more complicated and say, hey, I saw your videos on YouTube and I loved what you, and in fact, that's a good chunk of my business these days. It's interesting the way it's divided up very organically and very clearly. But the people mostly who hire me for one-on-one live support and training are the business owners, right? And so, I mean, it's so broad to think what's the greatest realization I've had with business owners. I think I'm trying to put context on it, right? And so if I had to say one thing that was like the thing that's come out of all my experience working with, and I've worked with a lot of different business owners in a lot of different businesses in all shapes and sizes of business, right? From small mom and pops that do maybe $100,000 a year to companies that do over 10 million a year. I've worked with them all. So what's the one realization? I think it's becoming a theme. I've been regurgitating this phrase a lot recently because I heard it from somebody else, and I think it sums it up perfectly. And I think, so I'm answering your question in a sense with, I guess you could say, a piece of guidance, which is, so maybe it's not exactly a realization, but it's a response to what the realization is, which is one key thing. And I think you're going to love this, Mike. The phrase is, if it can't be measured, it can't be managed. Right?
I've heard that before. Matter of fact,
if it can't be measured, it can't be managed.
Matt Rissell said that a lot, didn't he?
Who did? Matt Rissell? I don't know. I heard it from a guy who's in the Facebook users group for the platform I use for my website now, which is Kajabi. And I posted in there one day saying, I love how when you first log into the back end, it gives me my 30-day average sales number. It shows me my rolling 30 average sales. So immediately, first thing every day, I'm like, okay, it dropped, by a couple thousand over the last couple of days. I need to hustle, right? It lights that fire under where. Oh, we said I can. It lights a fire under my ass and makes me think, okay, what can I do to drum up some more sales today, right?
Oh yeah.
3 ways to increase sales, right? Get new clients, raise prices, or increase the number of times somebody buys from you. Exactly. So I have to figure out which of those 3 things I'm going to do when I want to get that average sales number up. In some respects, that's all I need to know every day. Because if I can make that number continually increase and I can control my expenses, I'm good. I'm not just going to make money, I'm going to keep money. And that's the other thing, right? A lot of us set goals and targets in terms of trying to, we're going to say, well, I'm going to hit this revenue number, right? But hitting that revenue number is useless if you spend all of it. I think that, and what I'm doing with my clients these days, the ones that hire me to consult with them, is I'm saying, forget the targets in terms of income and expenses. Let's set a cash reserve target. And let's say that at the end of this year, this is the amount of money I want to see in the bank. And then we can reverse engineer that and say, in order to get there, yes, we need to hit certain sales targets and we need to control our expenses. I guess that's maybe the greatest realization I've had, if that makes sense, in terms of what I've taken out of working with lots of businesses for all these years.
And that's a great realization. I've always thought that every time I walked into a small business owner, we actually had a common client at one point in time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised at how much they know and what they don't know, right? So that's where folks like you and I kind of fill the gaps. You have a great process, you have a great business. There might be just little holes that you need plugged, and I think that's where a guy like you or a guy like me might come in. Is, hey, we're going to take you to steal the book title, Good to Great, right? We're going to take you from wherever you are to the next level just by really covering your blind spot.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you this, though. With that in mind, I mean, with small business specifically, what do you think is the trend on where they should go or what they should be doing when it comes to managing cash or improving cash flow? What's the thing they should always be doing, or the new thing coming down the pipe in your line?
So I think part of the answer is going to be the same thing I just said, really, which is starting at the very end, which is how much cash do I want to have in the bank as of a certain point in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to manage the cash flow to get there, obviously, right? Because that's the whole thing. Let's say, for example, I take two different businesses, right? And one business generates $1 million in gross revenues, but they spend $1,250,000, right? And then you have another business, and that business generates $100,000, but they learn to live lean and they spend $30,000.
Yeah.
Who's better off?
Who's
right?
Better?
The guy who's $250,000 in debt, or the guy who's got $70,000 in the bank, right?
That's right. Hey, it doesn't matter the sales. You can't spend the sales. You can just spend cash.
Exactly. So I think that's really the key. And I think, again, it has to do with managing expenses. And that's why, as you well know, I love working with forecasting tools, because what that allows me to do is, and here's the bottom line, and I'm doing this now more than ever with my, I have a CFO consulting service. So I have 3 companies that are in this process with me right now. And so what we've done is I've said, here's the cash flow, here's the cash balance target. In order to get there, here's what the net cash flow needs to look like, right? And you know this well. And then within that, I say, okay, so we have projections, right? So line by line, every line on the P&L, I know here's what the expected sales are, here's what the expected expenses are, okay? And what I'm focusing on now more than ever is the real-time month-to-date variance analysis. Now, I know that was a lot of technical words in there, so I'll break it down. Really what we're saying is, so we're in the month of November. It's almost over, right? November's almost done. If I go into my client and I run that report, what I'm looking at is, okay, well, the month is almost over, so I should be pretty close to the targets. But let's say I look at one of the expense line items and I see that we've gone over by $1,000. The next thing I'm immediately looking for is I need to find one where we've gone under by $1,000. Now, at this point in the month, it's already a little too late to do anything about it. But if I was back on the 15th of the month, I have time to react, right? The problem with a lot of CFO services is they're not looking at this stuff until they're looking at it in arrears. They'll set up the projections and look forward then, but they're not analyzing it until the month's over and it's too late to do anything, right? Now, you can try and make up for any shortfalls last month in the current month, but much easier if I can analyze it in the middle of the month and say, we're over by 1,000 here, but we're under by 1,500 here. Let's put a moratorium on that. And if possible, not spend any more money on it. And line by line, there are certain things you couldn't possibly do that with, right? And so now what I'm doing with these guys is I'm identifying the line items where we have that flexibility, where if we need to, we can say no more spending here. Because at the bottom line is, no matter how I might have laid out my projections, if I can manage my net cash flow to hit that target, if I go over one place and I stay under in another, as long as I get my net cash flow targets met every month, I'm going to hit the bigger picture target.
Sure.
That's the bottom line at the end of the day.
It's like the difference between watching a movie and watching a play. If I watch a movie, I can't impact anything that's there. It just happened.
Right.
If I watch a play, I
You
can
can
make
throw
an
tomatoes.
impact. I could be right in the middle of it.
Right.
Right. I mean, I'm just saying I can make an impact because I'm watching it as it happens and I'm there in real time.
Hmm.
So good. Hey, last question. I know your time is valuable, and you probably got some big plans for the weekend.
I could spend all day with you, Mike.
Hey, well, there we go. I've got a guest bedroom. Just come on down.
Okay.
uh, this is the question I've been asking everybody that comes on the show is, hey, let's pretend that your best friend's going to start a business. What advice would you give him? What would you tell him?
First thing I would tell him to do is make sure he talks to an accountant and a lawyer.
Okay.
And I'm not even kidding. I had an
Yep.
existing client say, I'm starting a new business. What should I do? And he told me there was going to be some partners in this. I said, since there's going to be some partners, you need to talk to a lawyer to make sure your interests are protected and make sure he helps you select the right entity type to form.
Right.
So that's definitely one part. And the accountant, I think, is obvious why. And I'm not just saying that because it's self-serving. I'm saying that because I think that's the other really important area that, look, 9 times out of 10, by the time a client comes in my door, it's because they didn't talk to an accountant early on, and now there's a mess that they have to pay me a lot of money to clean up.
Just to clean up. That's right. Yeah.
Get it right the first time. That's what Billy Joel said.
But and I'll tell you, it's been a long-standing policy of mine is I've never seen a 50-50 partnership last long-term. Maybe you have. I've never seen it happen.
No.
So you always got to protect yourself, protect your interests. Okay. Hey, Seth, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Remind everybody. So go ahead. I'll let you close.
What? Oh.
Right. Just want to remind everybody to go to cashflowmike.com for all the show notes and any questions you have regarding today's episode. And remember to go to youtube.com and subscribe there. And also, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, we're on all of those. Just follow and leave a review. My name is Cashflow Mike. You've listened to, we used to call you Spreadsheet
Seth.
I can't even say it now. Spreadsheet Seth. And you've been listening to the Clear Path to Cash podcast. Thank you so much. And remember, don't be a dumb business owner.